Hello and welcome to Architects of Fate. My name is Tricky and today I'll be taking you through the updated deck building features of this upcoming title. Bear in mind everything is still in alpha, so some of the things you'll see today, especially visuals, are still subject to change. But no, with all that said, let's take a look at how the deck building works. Let's start with one of the biggest changes to deck building. Paragons now have their own unique passive abilities. A favourite of mine, for example, is Artemis, who has the leader power. Artemis gains the new ability, refill 1 mana every time you play a spell. Now, I absolutely love this type of playstyle because it enables spell slinging. I have a set amount of resources per turn, but getting a rebate of 1 every time I cast a spell leads to so many incredible synergies, more of which I'm going to show you later on. For those more aggressively minded players, we have the passives of leaders such as Bellona, who replaces all offensive equipment in the item deck with the unique equipment Bow of Destruction, which is a terrifying weapon dealing 2 damage thrice to the opposing tower, and of course this synergizes so nicely with Seek Destruction, Bellona's own regular passive ability. During deck building, you will assign Paragons to one of 5 slots, the first of which is the most important position. A Paragon in this position lends its leader's power to your deck building. So while all Paragons you'll play have a leader power, it is only that in the first position that will actually affect gameplay. This addition to the game has been incredible. Each Paragon having its own unique passive feels as though you're actually playing as the Paragon and getting to live out its hero fantasy throughout the game, rather than just collecting a collection of cards, for want of a word, and using those as you play. And really it's been an incredible gameplay experience as we've been working through the alpha testing. Let's take a look at how card selection works then. So let's say I want to play Artemis and I want to make sure I'm getting value out of her Paragon hero power. I'm going to put her in our first slot, dragging her across into this first slot underneath the crown. To actually add cards to the deck, then I'll simply click on this drop down here. This shows me all the associated cards to Artemis, of which I can choose 8 to include in the deck. I have options such as Prayers to the Moon, a powerful draw discard effect; Make Way, which selecting a Paragon moves it across and then allows me to draw; How Dare You, a fantastic card that enables the silencing, for want of a word, of very strong units. Your opponent plays a unit with 25 might and 25 health, you can turn it into a stag. Now, what's a stag, you ask? Simply by hovering over any relevant keyword, we can see the associated card, which just made deck building so much more simple and seamless. On the Hunt is one of my favourite cards to play with Artemis. Deals 3 damage to an enemy unit, and then creates 2 copies in hand. Now, these copies will not create the extra effect and also will disappear at the end of the round, but with Artemis on board, this changes from a chance to deal 9 damage total by spending 9 resources, or using Artemis, with the rebate of 1 every time, you get such a better deal because you're effectively only paying 2 on each occasion. Now, when I play with Artemis, my first step, I'm putting in 3 Prayers to the Moon. This card is incredible. Now, you don't get to choose to discard a card, however, it is fantastic. You're going to have so many cards on hand, so many cheap cards, you don't really care too much which one gets discarded because you're getting 2 more anyway. Make Way is one that I've struggled a little bit to get good value out of, and as a result, don't play at any copies, but I do play 1 copy of How Dare You. It's a handy way of dealing with some of these big threats. Also put in 2 copies of On the Hunt. This card is incredible. I've been thinking of playing 3, however, what I want to see 2 of, at least 1 in every game, is Arrows from the Moon. One of the more expensive cards in the game at 10 cost, and probably the signature spell of Artemis, allows me to deal 5 to all enemy units in lane twice. Just incredible value and a core card to be putting in when we're building Artemis. Now, generally when we build a deck, we're going to build with 2 different color combinations. I quite like playing purple and green. You may choose different ones yourself, or you may mix and match, having multiple different types. 2 have worked out quite well for me because of the restriction that you can only play cards in a lane of the 3 lanes where you have a Paragon of the associated colour. And as a result, I've quite liked having 2, just so I never end up in a situation, or at least very rarely, where I can't play a particular card where and when I want it. In my second position, I'm quite fond of Gaia. Gaia is a much more defensively late game oriented type of Paragon, where having done all this spelling in the early game to keep my opponent's board thin and whittle down the resources, I can start playing my big dudes. And from these big dudes, you'll see the associated card with Gaia, they start at 7 cost. These are some big units. Silthius at 7 is probably my favorite, coming into your curve quite early, relatively speaking. That's a 3 out for me. After that, I'm not huge on Mimus. Destroying equipment is quite neat. However, I'm more interested in stats at this stage. So I'll play this as a 1 of. I'll bring his cousin in at 9 for a 15-15 at a 1 as well. But for the other 3 slots, I'll bring in the big guns. 10 cost, 25. This is a 3 of in my book. Now, to bring the curve into a more middling point of view, I've got my light and easy spell slinging. I've got my late game. This is when I turn to Tyr. Now, Tyr is just a solid unit to play pretty much at any point, but I like having him as one of the first 3 Paragons because I'm guaranteed to have him then when I play my opener. At the start of the game, you play a Paragon to the middle lane at the same time as your opponent. Then you will choose a Paragon to go to the left or right lane, firstly with the knowledge of where your opponent has placed their Paragon, and in the other instance, on the other side, your opponent will have the knowledge of where you're placing your Paragon. But at 410, this is just a strong unit, and my third rate choice. As far as associated cards with Tyr, this is where we get more of the mid-range, more of the easier cards, I suppose. Not too much of commitment, not don't take too much resources. Easier cards to play is the best word I'm looking for. Warden, 3 cost, 3/5. Very simple 3 of for me. After that, there's a few other interesting ones in this. Bloat, discard a card to grant all allied followers +3 in lane. I haven't been sure of this. I've been testing it as a 1 of and it's been okay, but I'm still not entirely sure. Call to Arms, on the other hand, fantastic card. Summon a Warden, which we've seen before, at each allied empty slot in a lane. All you need is 1 green Paragon in the lane to play this card, and you can suddenly, at the cost of 7, spit out 4 units. Very strong. And I'm going to be playing this as a 2 of. And then to round off this curve a little bit, I want to have some smaller units, such as Warrior Trainee. Look, it's nothing special, but if it is left alone, it can actually grow to some pretty decent sizes, and that's why I'm going to play this as a 2 of. Now, closing these drop downs once more, we've got 2 solid green Paragons, but where the real excitement for me comes is playing the purple Paragons. In 4th place, I'm going to be playing the Oracle, who has 2 very interesting powers. On a cooldown of 3, I can draw a card, which is just fantastic for a deck that is going to be playing lots of cards, but Foresight Flare is my main crowd control feature of this deck. Second passive ability, deal 3 piercing damage to a random enemy on this lane whenever you play a Foresight. Just absolutely incredible, because you're going to see very quickly there's a lot of Foresights that are going to come out in this deck. Tormenting Insights is an easy 3 out for me, deals 2 damage to everything in the lane and gives me a Foresight. Bear in mind, if I'm playing this with Artemis in that lane, I'm getting, at least with Artemis at all, I'm getting the rebate, which is so fantastic. Foresight only costing 1 as well, effectively costs 0 when you're playing Artemis. So that's an easy 3 of for me. In we go. Deceptive Prophecy, it's a situational one, stunning a hero, mine or my opponent's, and then creating 3 Foresights in hand. Often I find I'm using this on myself. The reason being, I can get so much incredible value from playing this often for 2, or at least 3 with a rebate of 1, and then getting 3 Foresights in hand is incredible, especially when you consider our 4th Paragon, the Oracle, doing huge damage to your opponent's lane. But then, as a little treat for later on, with our 5th Paragon, this is a key part of our strategy. But that said, I'm only putting it as a 1 of. It is a little bit awkward to use on occasion. Moving then to the next card is one that I'm not going to try to pronounce. However, it's fine. I'm going to put it as a 1 of in the deck as well. Getting a Foresight when it's damaged, it's a chunky sort of unit. You stick it in front of something small and you get consistent long-term value, but it's not one that I'm going to build the entire deck around. Maybe I'll put it up to a 2 of. You know what? I'll put it up to a 2 of, and then see-through is definitely one I want to see at least 1 of in the game. Selecting a purple Paragon, of which we're going to have 3, and dealing 10 piercing damage to the opposing unit. And if it dies, deal 10 damage to the tower behind it. Crazy value and a great way of turning the tides of battle. A very strong tempo play. We're going to play it as a 2-of. Now, to pull this whole deck together, we're going to look to Kairos. Kairos is my personal favorite Paragon. A little bit challenging and difficult when I first came across him, but I love his effect. Kairos deals 12 damage to the enemy tower if your opponent passes 4 times in the one turn. It doesn't need to be sequentially, it just needs to be 4 passes. Now, because of the way the gameplay pattern works, I will play a card, my opponent has the opportunity to play a card or pass. All of our cards are very cheap, often sometimes 1 with a rebate of 1, which means we can draw out our opponent, forcing them to either play cards or pass, and very easily and very consistently get this trigger off. So we're going to put Kairos in our 5th slot. The reason he's in the 5th slot is we want to make sure we have our cheap cards in hand by the time we play him, because on the turn we play Kairos, we want to have enough resources available to get that cost of an action going. As far as the supporting cards for Kairos, we have some absolutely incredible cards. Firstly, a step forward. We're going to play this as a 2-of, move an allied follower to an empty adjacent slot, and draw a card. 1 cost and draw a card are the most beautiful words imaginable in this deck, and we're going to play this as a 2-of. A final touch, also an interesting one. Deal 1 piercing damage to a unit in a lane, and then you see it again, draw a card. Once more, that's a 2-of. A timely intervention. This card is cracked. Stun an enemy unit, and then each player draws a card. It's incredible. You play this on your opponent's big beater, it buys you an entire turn of space, and you'll draw a card. There's a good chance that you'll be able to use and afford the card you draw. That's a lot less likely for your opponent. As a result, we're playing this as a 3-of. And finally, for our last card, I say last card, looks like we've forgotten to add 2 for Gaia. We'll get back to that in a second, but for our last card, for Kairos at least, we're going to play the Bag of Opportunities as a 1-of. It's a little bit situational. Create cards from Kairos' pool that cost 2 or less mana until you have 5 cards in hand, which is every other card. Trouble is, we often have so many cards in hand, it can be a little bit difficult to utilize this, but we'll play it as a 1-of just in case. Now, to make sure we actually have a legal deck, we'll go back to Gaia and make sure we're playing those other 2 copies of the Porphyrion, because this is a big card, and this card wins games, especially with Gaia's ability of giving followers with 10 or more power Overwhelm, the ability to hit your opponent's tower through their unit if you're dealing excess damage. I've had a great fun with this deck, it's been fantastic, and now we're going to jump into some games and see how that works. Now, as always, visuals, as I said earlier on, are an alpha, but if you'd like to get involved with this alpha, please be sure to click the link in the bottom of the video below, which will bring you to the Discord, where you can join the community and become an alpha playtester. I can't wait to see you there. Best of luck.